Hello and welcome to Super Awesome Runner. My name is Sam. I'm the host of the show. You can find more of this show's content at Super Awesome Runner on Instagram and on Threads. You can also find more of our shows on the Super Awesome Mix Podcast Network. Last week, of course, I ran a cross post episode from the Super Awesome Mix podcast itself, featuring me and Matt talking about my 12 favorite songs as I entered my 41st year. And now I'm in a new age group for running, which is just so exciting. I'm the young, sprightly 40-year-old in the 40 to 44 group. We'll see how I do with the upcoming New York City half in just under 2 weeks at this point. It is coming up quickly. I do not have a goal for this upcoming half other than to cross the finish line and enjoy myself. And what's funny is that the number of times that I actually have entered a race not having a goal and then actually getting a PR, a personal record or personal best, is insane. It's just so funny to me how this tends to happen over and over again. I'll start a race or I'll line up in the corrals or morning of or day before, and I'll just think, you know what, like conditions just aren't right or I'm not feeling it. I'm just going to let go and have fun. And I run one of the best races of my life on that day and end up with a PR. My 10-kilometer personal best was registered on a day when I was shooting for 55 or 56 minutes. And when I crossed the finish line, I had no idea, but I had actually ran it in 52 minutes, which to date is still my fastest 10K. The other or earlier this year, I had a 10K, similar one in Central Park, but different start location. And I was coming off of the injury, that I've been dealing with. I hadn't really been practicing speed work at all. I've just been doing very slow zone 2 based runs. And so my goal was to run a 105. I just wanted to kind of run it and get the 9+1 credit, enjoy myself, see how it goes. About halfway through, I realized that I was tracking several minutes ahead of the 105. And by the time, again, that I crossed the finish line, I had completed that one in 57 minutes or 58. It was around there. And I just couldn't believe it. I had no plans to run a sub one that day, but my body just kind of took over and was able to, be kind of the bar that I had set for myself, the very low bar that I had set for myself. Contrast this to the number of times I've shown up to a race with a very specific goal in mind and just completely blown it. And, I'm looking at you, Brooklyn half. I have a rematch this year. That's a year. This is a race that I do want to get a personal best on. I'm going to have to find a balance between seeking this goal and learning to let go of this goal, which is the topic, of course, on today's podcast. Here's why I think this happens, why it, occurs to me, and I think it occurs to a lot of us that whenever you let go of a goal, especially right before you're about to go and compete or do the activity, why we tend to actually exceed it and make our goal or, nail the presentation, get the job interview, whatever the kind of finish line is for you. There's an interesting phenomenon in our bodies where it's referred to as muscle memory. People talk all the time about muscle memory. Oh, it's just muscle memory. What they really mean by that is that the programming to execute an action is done in your subconscious. We have talked a lot about the, subconscious brain. It is most of our brain versus our thinking brain, which is where all of our thoughts occur and what we tend to give a lot of credit for whenever we have an idea, or we think that the thinking brain solves all of our problems for us, but it is a very small part of our brain, and it doesn't really do much other than turn all of those complex electrical impulses into words and thoughts and things that we can more easily interpret. It's a fascinating, wonderful thing, no doubt, but the majority of our brain power is way deep in the basement, and we can't access or even remotely understand what is going on down there in our subconscious brain. So when people talk about muscle memory, they're more or less referring to our brain's deep programming that allow us to do things without, inducing the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, and we don't have to consciously track what we're doing. We use muscle memory for things like brushing our teeth and walking around the apartment while you do it, or walking around your home while you brush your teeth. These are two pretty complex actions when you think about it. If you think brushing your teeth is not difficult, switch hands. Like if you're a right-handed person and you brush your teeth with your right hand, try brushing your teeth with your left hand tonight. I am willing to bet that you will shock yourself at how difficult it actually is to get the movement right, to be able to maneuver all around your mouth, and to not have it just be really awkward where you're just kind of like jabbing the toothbrush in and out of your mouth. It's weird, right? That is a perfect example of what happens whenever you try to take on a task that normally you do subconsciously. So, in order to do that, plus be able to walk around, these are two programs, so to speak, that take a lot of energy, but our subconscious brain learns how to do them and it takes over all of the complex machinery and movement and all the neurons that are firing in order for you to do that thing. That's a great example of muscle memory. I bring up muscle memory because I think whenever we let go of a goal, we are then relying on our deep programming to execute the goal itself. And we're no longer relying on our thinking brain to do the work for us. Our thinking brain has all the best intentions, but it's really not very well suited for pursuing things that are really kind of determined by our body, especially in the context of a race. Another really good example of what happens whenever you get your thinking brain involved, and perhaps you've had this experience because it certainly happened to me. If you have a passcode on your phone or a password that you have to enter onto your computer, you'll find if you haven't changed it in a while, you can type that thing with your eyes closed, right? Login screen pops up, you immediately just start typing, and you're good to go. Have you ever tried to think about what your password actually is when you're not sitting in front of your computer? And it's a very different task. I have found sometimes I have to literally put my hands in front of me, in front if I'm, somewhere out in the world and I want to try to think about what my password is for my computer, or to put my hands in front of me, close my eyes, and imagine a keyboard is sitting right underneath my fingertips, and I can feel myself type them out, and now I know what my password is. But without doing that action and incurring that kind of enter your password program, it's very difficult for our thinking brain to access that information. Our thinking brain kind of messes up our pattern and our ability to run that program. It gets in the way. It's kind of like a door jamb all of a sudden on a very nice swinging hinge. It just kind of stops you. And in fact, there have been times in my life, like I remember in middle school when I had a locker and a passcode. I would go away for winter break. I'd come back in the spring and I would have no idea what my combination was to get into the locker, and I just kind of was like, "Okay, I have to, shake off my thinking mind, walk right back up to it again and kinda reset," and immediately my fingers would know how to turn the dial to the right, to the left, to the right with the exact numbers, and I could pop it open. But if I thought too hard about it, I would have no idea what the 3 numbers were and how to do it. So I think whenever we go into a presentation, a race, an interview, any kind of complex scenario like that, where you have presumably practiced a whole lot and you feel ready, if we are thinking too much about the goal and we're engaging that top part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, we overthink it and we stumble and we can just completely bomb it. Which is the case that, for all the races that I've showed up and just missed the mark so wide because I was just way too invested in the numbers and how to do it and all the pacing. And it was too much. I basically overindulged my thinking brain and figured I could overplan my way to getting to the PR versus the couple times that showed up, let go of the goal, trusted in my body to be able to hit that goal. It's kind of a weird little Jedi mind trick. Like, I'm not letting go in the sense of I don't care if I get it or not, because deep down I do want a personal best in a race, but I'm not actively thinking about that goal. I'm not over planning it. I'm not breaking it down. I'm not engaging my thinking brain about it. I'm kind of letting my thinking brain let that go and trust in my training and in my body and letting the quote unquote muscle memory take over. Because if you have trained, if you have practiced a presentation, if you have done the interview prep, if you've done the homework, if you've done, the legwork prior to this moment, you've read the lines for your play, et cetera, you just have to let that subconscious programming run its course. And your brain is going to know what to do and your body is going to know what to do and you'll fly. You'll do great. I just think that is so interesting, and it's something that I've always been fascinated by, that kind of interference between the thinking brain and our subconscious brain, and how we can get in our own way more often than not with it, even though we have very good intentions not to do that. So as you spend this next week, if you've got a race coming up, if you're also running the New York City Half, if you have a big interview, whatever milestone you are working towards, whatever goal you're working towards, do the legwork. This is not an excuse not to do the work, but when it comes time to kind of show up for the thing, let go of that goal. Like hold it loosely. Let it be out there. You know that you want what you want, but don't execute and overthink it and kind of mess up all of the training that is already deep in your muscles, in your bones, in your brain, and just trust it. Trust that you've done enough to show up and knock it out of the park, and I'm willing to bet that you will more often than not. This week is a short week. Last week, unfortunately, I was ill, and so I didn't have too much time to prep a full 20-minute episode, so gonna give you back 8 minutes of your life. That's honestly, that's a little bit of a trigger for me. I never liked when I was in a meeting and people would say, "Oh, I'm gonna give you back 7 minutes." It's like, "Great, what let me go pursue my life's greatest passions in the next 7 minutes because you've given me this extra time." That's an aside. So sorry. But in either case, I hope you have a wonderful, super awesome week as always. Like I said at the top of the show, you can reach out to me anytime at Super Awesome Runner on Instagram and on Threads. Let me know how things are going. Let me know if there's a topic that interests you that you'd like me to talk about. With that, I will see you next Tuesday.